So any thoughts here? Do you believe that Jesus wants us to do this today? Okay, let's talk about that. How are you going to do that? You can't raise the dead. Okay, go ahead. Let's go over here.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
You can raise the dead. You can raise the spiritual dead as you
Yeah.
pray for them, and they rise up, out
Okay.
of their spiritual death.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there are different ways in which death is defined in the Bible. First of all, you got spiritual death. Yes. Okay. And so someone can be, and Ephesians chapter 2 verse 1 talks about you were dead in trespasses and sins, right? So to be dead in trespasses and sins, to be risen from the dead, that's your first real resurrection. Sin kills us, right? So can a person be active in the physical body and be really dead? Yes. Yeah. Okay. That's one thing. I know, I heard about this preacher who, well, was actually a professor at the seminary who took his homiletics class to teach them how to preach. And he took them to the cemetery and he said, show me how well you can preach, right? And they had to preach to the graves. And he said, raise the dead. Didn't work so well. You start realizing that what we are doing here, the work that we do when we work for God, is really all God's doing. It's not our doing. If he wants to raise the dead, he can. Okay. Anyone else? Thoughts on this? Okay. Hold on. We're going to bring you. Jose's got a microphone. Yeah. No, this man. There you go.
Okay. I might not be reading this text correctly. However, was not Jesus speaking to the disciples?
He was.
And they did raise the dead.
They did.
Heal the sick and they cast out demons.
They did.
So at the time that he gave this here, I sense that, that they could do that.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
I do too. Physically, yeah. Healing the sick. Isn't that exciting? You have that power in you. How have we stopped ourselves from doing this? Well, our faith. At what stage do we have faith in him that he can do what he asks us to do? So let's talk about the medical missionary work and how that started.
So this was the first administrator of Loma Linda, and this is what the first administrator of Loma Linda said to those who wanted to work there. This is at Loma Linda. We are here under God's appointment to start a large institution. We have no funds. We are unable to pay your traveling expenses and know not when we can begin to pay salaries. The most that we can say to you is that we need help. If your heart is in the work, come along and share our poverty with us. Isn't that incredible? And what's Loma Linda today?
Today, it is very large and it's very well funded. When it started, it wasn't. It was very small and it started with self-sacrifice and self-surrender and no funds. And we look at ourselves and we say, I can't because I don't have this and this and this and this. But do you have a relationship with God? Do you believe he can empower you to do all things? And that's what he's asked us to do. If I look at my life, I say there's no way that I have achieved anything in my life without Jesus. Nothing. And I rely upon that every single day. Without him, I am nothing. But with him, I can do all things. So I don't want to be cut off from him. And if he asks us to do things, we can achieve things we never could achieve. I know when we first came to It Is Written, we just prayed about it. We never asked anything about the funding. We never asked anything about anything. We accepted the call, and we accepted that God was calling us. We knew that he was calling us. It made no sense that he would call us because we weren't traditional evangelists by any means. And so he called us to this work. But we tested, and he made it very clear that we should go. And then when we got there, the guy who was in charge of funds, our financial director, said to me, "Do you realize how deeply in debt we are?" And I said, "I had no idea." And he said, "Well, what are you going to do about it?" I said, "I don't know. I'm going to do anything about it because I'm not a fundraiser." So I said, "How long will it take, at the current rate?" And he said, "About 32 years to get out of debt." So I said, "Have you ever heard of George Mueller?" You know George Mueller? So he started orphanages. He helped literally thousands of children who were orphans. And he did it with prayer. He literally recorded everything that came in. He never asked anyone for anything. And they put up big buildings. They didn't have food on the table. They would pray. Someone would knock on the door, and there would be food for all those orphan kids, thousands of kids that he took off the streets. He gave in his lifetime, over 120,000 kids, he gave an excellent education, home to live in. At the end of when they would graduate, he would put in their hand two things. He would give them a coin, and he'd give them a Bible. He said, "The coin you can spend, the Bible must never leave you." Those people changed, their whole lives were changed because of that. Why? Because one man prayed. So I said to our creative director, "We're going to use George Mueller's model. We're going to trust God, and we're going to pray." He said, "I think we should try something else." So he called a professional fundraiser. I told the fundraiser about my idea about George Mueller. He said, "No, that's not going to work." I said, "Well, okay. I'm going to try it anyway." And 3 years later, we were out of debt. I didn't ask anyone for money. I really didn't. And the money came in. Our financial director came to me 3 years later, and he said, "My faith has grown because of you." And I said, "Thank the Lord for that." But he said, "I've never seen this happen before." Everyone at the Seventh-day Adventist church headquarters, there are people who have been working in the church headquarters for more than 40 years. They said, "I've never, ever seen an organization turn around so quickly." They were ready to close it down before we got there. So what I'm saying is, God doesn't require our funds. He requires our heart. That's it. He says, "Give me your heart. Are you trusting me? If I'm calling you, I'll enable you to do what I've asked you to do." Okay? And that's what he does. This statement, I mentioned it yesterday. It says, and this is from Counsels on Health, page 533. "I wish to tell you that soon there will be no work done in ministerial lines but medical missionary work." And the first time I read that, I thought to myself, okay, we're coming to a time when people aren't going to listen to preaching, but they will listen to a nurse or a doctor. I was wrong in my assumption as to what she was saying. So I spoke to missionaries. I spoke to people who are doctors and nurses. One of the things I told you was I talked to friends of ours who both the husband and the wife were nurses in Mongolia, and they were serving as missionaries. They were starting a school there. They were doing a lot of things in Mongolia. And they came back from Mongolia, and I asked them the question, should I become a doctor or a nurse? And this was their response. I shared some of it with you yesterday. I'll give you the exact words. They said, okay.
"I don't have to be a nurse to help people in Mongolia. If I could just convince people to drink at least 4 cups of water a day, I could make them 100% more healthy than they are at present." Just something so simple, right? And then they went on to say, all you need to do is learn the principles of New Start. You all know what New Start is, right?
Okay.
And practice them yourself. When people see how healthy you are, they will want what you have.
So what's New Start? It's talking about nutrition, exercise, water, what else? Sunshine, temperance, air, rest, and trust in God. Okay? Those principles, those 8 doctors are 8 natural doctors. And God has said, these, if you put them into practice, you will be healthy and strong. And so teaching those to other people. I've taught them to so many people. And the most important for me is trust in God. To share that with people. I used to do stop smoking programs. I don't know if you remember those 5-day stop smoking programs. We did the CHIP program. And we weren't having a great deal, you were helping people get healthy, but we weren't having a great deal of success of them coming into the church. But then I started to realize we were not sharing Jesus with them. We were just sharing healthy principles. When I started being courageous enough to actually share Jesus in everything I said, people at first were kind of taken aback, and they're like, but then it was natural. I wasn't forcing it on them. I wasn't preaching it at them. I was just sharing my faith. And as I was sharing my faith in what Jesus has done for me, they accepted it. And they said, I like that. Then we had people becoming Seventh-day Adventists. So changing without Jesus is just changing the outside for a very short time. And it does work.
So we have come to a time when every member of the church should take hold of medical missionary work. We shared this with you yesterday too. And remember, we said that the medical missionary work isn't necessarily something in the medical field.
Yes.
But it's more benevolent work or being a helper. Helping, it could be helping take care of children or mowing the lawn or doing yard work or anything like that. Just even touching someone, smiling at someone, or just being there for someone, helping them and taking them into your home. And so that's really what it's about, being a helper in the benevolent work, right?
So yesterday we were talking to someone, and he said that in his work, he works in the funeral home business. And he said sometimes just putting his hand on a person's shoulder is very healing for that person. Okay? So just a touch. You can heal people with a touch. Jesus did. And he can touch people through you. What other ways can you do that? You can do acts of service, mowing someone's lawn, helping them with their kids. There's so many ways in which you can open up your heart to other people. And when they see that, just words of affirmation. Think about just speaking words of kindness to people, spending time with people, giving gifts. Some of us are good gift givers, or we bring food to people. Think of ways in which you can bring healing to people. You know, all of those ways are ways of being a medical missionary. Think of it differently, right? Because medicine is more than just pills and injections. Medicine is love. It's forgiveness. Would you agree? Is kindness medicine? Absolutely. Okay? And there's so many ways in which we can just bring peace into people's lives with a word. And so there's so many ways in which we can be a medical missionary.
We mentioned this yesterday, but we actually got the quote today. It says, every association of life calls for the exercise of self-control, forbearance, and sympathy. We differ so widely in disposition, habits, education, that our ways of looking at things vary. We judge differently. Our understanding of truth, our ideas in regard to the conduct of life are not in all respects the same. There are no two whose experience is alike in every particular.
Isn't that amazing?
No
This
one,
is
no two people are alike.
so we don't have to make carbon copies of ourselves. We don't have to say there's one, this is the answer and you have to believe it the way I believe it. Please. We should be able to sit down and just open the Bible and read it with people and say, what do you think? Isn't that beautiful? What do you think? And then we're naturally engaged in a relationship where Jesus can enter into that relationship. And it's a saving relationship because it's the power of God's word. Not all of us are the same. As we said yesterday, not all of us are Dr. Chitties where we can just eat one meal a day. Okay? We're all different. And when we look at each other, we say, okay, that works for him. What does God want me to do? So there's no cookie cutter. We're not all the same. We should be willing to be who God created us to be. Each of us is different. I know, we have different children. They're so different from each other.
Even though they're two girls, right?
And from the same family.
Yes,
Our
and
two
from-
grandsons, very
so
different from each other.
different, yes.
Okay? So, and if you have more than one child, you know they're all different, right? And you want that. They see life differently, and that's the beauty of it.
So the quote goes on. Look at this. The trials of one are not the trials of another. The duties that one finds light are to another most difficult and perplexing. So frail, so ignorant, so liable to misconception is human nature, that each should be careful in the estimate he places upon another. We little know the bearing of our acts upon the experience of others. What we do or say may seem to us of little moment, when could our eyes be opened, we should see that upon it depended the most important results for good or for evil. Right? So what might be a burden for me might be light for Mike. Right? No two people are the same. Our trials are different from one another. The way we see things are different. And that's why we have to be so careful how we relate to other people and what we say and what we do to others.
So yesterday we talked about what is making us sick. And this statement came up. It's not what you're eating that's making you sick, but it's what's eating you. And in Ministry of Healing, it goes on to say that 9/10 of all diseases from which men suffer have their origin in the mind. Okay? So think about healing in terms of that. Healing people that are sick. So there is a disease that begins inside. So for example, I can quote a number of programs that we've done, but we did one with this lady named Anka. Anka had 2 children, and she thought her life was happy. She was raising her children. She had a happy marriage. And then one day her husband came to her and said, I'm leaving you. I have another woman. So he left. How do you think that affected her? Very shortly after, she got cancer. And her hair was falling out. She was getting all the treatments and everything. She was taking her kids to school. And at the school, her kids came back with a little piece of paper that said, we want to go, your child would like to go to Africa on a missionary trip. And here she was, dying of cancer, and she looked at that piece of paper and she said, before I die, I want to go to Africa. I've always dreamed of being a missionary in Africa. So she went to the school and she said, can I go on the trip? They said, no. And she said, why not? She says, I've always wanted to go to Africa. I'm dying of cancer, please. And they said, no, you can't. Because you're a parent, and no parents are allowed to go. But she's a German, and so she didn't give up. She kept asking, she kept looking for a way, and eventually they said, okay, Anka, you can go. So she went there, she met some people there, she realized there was people that needed help there. She came back to Canada, she raised funds, she started a school over there. She met a man who was a filmmaker. She brought him over there. She promoted this whole school. Her hair grew back. She got off of the cancer treatment, and she has never looked back. Years ago, she had cancer. She doesn't have it anymore. Okay? So what happened to her? She had purpose. She had a calling. She was devastated when her husband said, I'm leaving you. And it was like, that was it. Tickets. My life is over. But now she had a new purpose. And that new purpose was like, okay, I'm alive now. I have to be alive because these children in Africa need me. And she came alive. Completely different person. And she ended up marrying the guy who did the film making for her, who is actually our creative director. Amazing story. And we've seen so many people like this who have gone from, now I told you about Sarah Voot Lee yesterday, who did his doctorate in forgiveness. And one of the things he found out with forgiveness was all the studies now outside of the religious realm are saying that the root of most causes of forgiveness is bitterness. There was a trauma. There was something that caused a bitterness and it was held onto and they couldn't forgive. Okay? That's very interesting. I think that's very, very interesting. So what are we talking about?
So Helping Daddy Living says the only security for any soul is right thinking. As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he. Proverbs 32 verse 7. So the only security for any soul is right thinking.
So this is about what's going on in your mind. We have that book at the back, Helping Daily Living. If we run out of them, you can contact us at Is Written. We'll send you a copy. So we're talking about self-talk. And self-talk is all the words that we tell ourselves in our thoughts. It is the conversation in your head.
So that all the words that you are saying to yourself all the time, that's your self-talk. Self-talk is the words we tell ourselves about people, about ourselves, about our experiences, about life in general, even about God, about the future, the past, the present. Mm-hmm. So this is the self-talk, are the words that we're saying to ourselves. Mm-hmm. Because the way you think will influence the way you feel. Mm. So what we think, our thoughts, are going to determine our feelings and our behaviors.
I'll give you one really well-known case study in the medical journals. A man by the name of Sam Schumann. He was told that he had metastatic liver cancer and he was going to die in 3 months. 3 months later, he died of the belief that he had metastatic liver cancer. When they opened him up, he did not have metastatic liver cancer. But the doctor's diagnosis, he believed. And he submitted to it. And he was defeated. Now, I'm not saying that all illness is just because you're thinking it. Some of it is in our body and from our environment and, some of those things that are around us. But the influence of the mind is so powerful, don't you think?
What about that study that was done in Japan with the poison ivy?
Yes. So there was a study done in Japan. This is in a book called The Happiness Advantage, and it was written by Sean Achor, who's a professor at Harvard University. And they took 2 groups of people. One group of people was highly allergic to poison ivy. Another group didn't have allergies. They blindfolded them, and they said on their right arm, that they were putting just a harmless plant, that they were rubbing it on their arm, but it was actually poison ivy. They couldn't see it. And then on the other arm, they told them that they were putting poison ivy, but it was just a harmless plant. In every case, whether they said they were allergic or not, in every case, where did they get an allergy? Where the harmless plant was put, and they were told it was poison ivy. Every single time. And the place where the poison ivy was put, no reaction whatsoever.
Excepting there was one, I think. There was one that did react to the poison.
Out of all the cases? Okay.
Yes.
There could have been one in the state. I don't remember. But I mean, it was overwhelming. So that you're saying, wow, the mind is very powerful. Or what was that other study with
There
Joseph
was
Wolf?
the other study about these ladies that were pregnant and they were experiencing awful morning sickness. And so they went to the doctor, and the doctor gave them medication to stop the morning sickness, but it was actually a pill to make them vomit.
Yeah.
Right? And because they believed there was something to stop the morning sickness, their morning sickness went away.
Yeah.
But he was actually giving them something that would cause vomiting.
Yeah.
Right? So our minds are so powerful.
That's
So
really powerful.
what you think is what you are.
Yeah.
Right?
So the power of the mind, that self-talk, is really, really critical. You believe it. You believe your thoughts. Changing those thoughts is really not easy.
No.
Because you have talked yourself into a certain way of seeing things and seeing life. So what does your self-talk look like? There's a really good book, Christian book. It's called Telling Yourself the Truth by William Backus. I highly recommend it. Every single student that I have told in the past, they've read that book and they've said this is the best, most helpful book on medicine that I've ever read. And it's Christian. And he talks about how the mind works, but how claiming God's promises can actually change yourself, change your view of yourself, and change life, okay? Telling yourself the truth. William Backus, no, he's not. So, but it is recommended at Weimar for their depression recovery program as well. So are you telling yourself the truth about people, about God, about the future, about the past, about the world we live in? What are you saying to yourself? So the biggest thing is to challenge the voice in your head. And the one who can help you with that, of course, is God. In prayer and his word, because it challenges you. You know that. When you read the Bible, what does it say? It's like a double-edged sword. It's going to challenge you. It's going to cut right through and say, hey, is this really true?
So we want to encourage you to ask God to reveal the lies or the misbeliefs that you are telling yourself and to replace them with the truth.
So challenge that self-talk in your head. Think through it. Because we think to ourselves, when I think a thought, no one sees it. When I think a thought, nothing really happens. But that's not true. Because when you think a thought, something really does happen. And it's measurable. We can see it now. What happens in a person when they think a thought actually affects them down to the cellular level. They can measure that. So just thinking a thought will influence you. It can influence your hormones. It can influence the saliva in your mouth. It'll influence the shape of your brain. The way you think over time will change you. Okay? Right down to the cellular level. The way you think about God will change you. Okay? That's really critical. We're going to talk about that tomorrow when we talk about the Sabbath. You don't want to miss that. At 2 o'clock tomorrow, when we talk about the Sabbath, is really, really critical. Understanding that you were designed to keep the Sabbath.
For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts.
So God's ways are higher than our ways. His thoughts are higher than our thoughts. And we want to challenge ourselves with those thoughts. That's why reading the Bible, will change you. It will transform you. It will change your character, your outlook on life. I remember being at a church, quite a large church here in the prairies. It wasn't in this province. And it was one night we were doing a youth series of meetings, and one of the young people at that church brought a friend to the meeting. And I read some things about the Bible and how good the Bible is for your mind. And I also read about how, we went through studies on how media is shaping people's minds and how scrolling on your phone and all of that is changing you. And this young man, who was not a Seventh-day Adventist, he walked right up to the front. He was a Mennonite young boy. And he came up to the front and he was crying. And he said, "Do you have a Bible?" And I said, yes, we'll get you a Bible. And he said, "I want what you were talking about. If it's going to change my mind, I need my mind changed, because my mind has been so, corrupted." And he said, "I need a Bible." I said, "We'll get you a Bible," right? Young man, young teenage boy.
So, who are you? And how do you see yourself right now, today?
So someone
do you
said
see
to you,
yourself?
how do you see yourself, or who are you? What kind of answer would you normally give? You'd say, "I'm a farmer, I'm a doctor, I'm a teacher." Yeah? What if you lost your ability to do those things? Would you still be you? Are you defined by your work? Yes or no? No? Okay. What would you say? Yes. I'm a child of the King. I love that. I love that. I'm a child of the King. Isn't that a beautiful song?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that song. And that's really it. That will never change. No matter what it is. If you say, "Oh, I'm a pianist and I'm really good at playing the piano." Yeah, but you might lose your fingers one day, or the control of them. You might not be able to play the piano the way that you used to. "Oh, I'm a singer," but what if you lost your voice? "Oh, I'm a hockey player," but what if you lose your ability to play hockey, right? What if you lose those abilities? You're still a child of the King, right? You're still a child of God. That's what the Bible says.
Look at this beautiful promise. "Behold, what manner of love the Father has given unto us, that we should be called the children of God."
Okay, our microphone is gone there. Okay. Do you have another one there, Orville?
Can
You all know the quote, right? "Behold, what manner of love the Father has given unto us, that we should be called the children of God." That's what we are. This is who we are. We are the children of God. So you are a child of God. That's your identity. That will never change. Even death won't change that. He has his children, and you will always be loved by him.
So here's a question for you. What are the odds of you being born? What are the odds of you being born?
What do you think? What are the odds? 1 in
Someone say 2 million?
2 million?
Okay.
100 trillion? What's that?
100%.
100% what?
Odds
The odds? You mean you're not going to make it? You wouldn't? The odds of
being born.
oh,
100%.
you're here already. Okay. But what we're talking about is this. Think about your parents meeting. Okay, and so they had to meet. Of all the people in the world, your parents had to meet to create you, right? But they didn't create you, of course. But then from the, countless sperm cells from your father and the reproductive eggs from your mother, the exact ones that had to meet to make you had to happen. And that didn't have to happen just from your two parents. Their parents had to meet. And the parents of those parents, all the way back to Adam and Eve. And if there was a war somewhere along the way, or if there was a disease or an accident, and one of those people was not included, you wouldn't be here. Does that make sense? So now think about the odds of you actually being here. The most conservative estimates are 1 in 400 trillion, okay? But it's more like 1 in 400 quadrillion. Okay, now you don't understand how big that number is. So let's think about this. If you were to live for a million seconds, you would live for 11.57 days. So we've all lived for a million seconds. A billion seconds would be 31.7 years. A billion is a lot larger than a million. So when we say that someone like Sam Altman has now made on OpenAI $3.5 billion, that's a lot of money, okay? He doesn't have to work a day in his life. A trillion seconds, wow, that's big. That's 3,179 years. A quadrillion seconds is 31,700,700 years. So we haven't lived that long yet. Okay. So the odds of you being born are 1 in 400 quadrillion. That's not a quadrillion, that's 400 quadrillion.
So you are a miracle.
Yeah?
You are a miracle.
Because the odds were against you ever being born. You're here now, yeah, 100% that you're here. But before you were here, you being here, did God know you before you were born? Yes.
Look at this beautiful. I love this Bible verse. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you and approved of you as my chosen instrument. So he knew exactly who your mommy was going to be and exactly who your daddy was going to be. And your grandparents and your great-grandparents. You're my chosen instrument, and before you were born, I consecrated you to myself as my own. Wow, that's beautiful.
If that lands, it lands pretty heavy. You just say, wow. Wow. I'm here because God wants me to be here.
Yes.
That's
And
huge.
you are a miracle. You are his miracle. Life is a miracle.
So he created you that way. And yet, as we did yesterday, we have had damaged relationships. Mm-hmm. So that little baby, born perfectly, comes into this world and you're scared because you know that little innocent baby can be damaged. We looked at this yesterday. Did some of you keep those? Hold on to those? Those damaged relationships we have on the top and the bottom of this chart here. You got pressure patterns. Those are things that people do to us. And on the bottom, you got abuse issues. That's what people do to us. On the sides, you have emotional issues and spiritual issues. That's our reaction to what people do to us.
Our response.
And our response. And so we come into this world and there's all these pressures. And where do they come from? Usually from within our own homes. These pressures to perform, these pressures to be controlled, to follow the dictates, right? To follow the preaching and everything correctly. And sometimes it turns the focus on self. And sometimes you feel empty inside. Sometimes you feel angry. There's a critical, judgmental attitude, and sometimes you're completely neglected. No one talks to you.
That's true. But you know, God loves you, and he created you, and he has a plan for your life. And Jesus promised that he has come to heal the brokenhearted. Mm-hmm. And he wants to heal you and hold you and make you whole again and to heal you holistically.
Mm-hmm. And on this side of eternity, we call that the work of a lifetime. We call it sanctification. It's daily coming to the cross. It's dying to self daily and having a renewed view, changed by the renewing of our mind, right? Transformation. And we gave you this worksheet yesterday to go through people who have hurt me and what has happened through that process. Maybe it was a family member, maybe it was a friend, maybe it was someone at church, maybe it was a colleague at work. All of these places where you could have been harmed by others. And then there's a prayer at the end to go through each of those relationships, to go through that and go through that process of healing and forgiveness so that God can heal you. So let's talk about that further when we talk about bitterness. So when Jesus teaches his disciples to pray, he teaches them this. He starts off with praise, and he ends the Lord's Prayer with praise. And in between, he talks about, daily things that we ask God for. And one of them is to forgive us as we forgive those who sin against us. And then he at the end, you would think he would comment on something about worship. But he doesn't. What does he comment on? Forgiveness. And he says, as you forgive others, then you can be forgiven by your Father in heaven. But if you can't, then he can't forgive you. Now, I don't think he's talking about salvation here. I think he's talking about our relationship with him. That there is really a problem that happens in our relationship with God when we can't forgive one another, because he's willing to forgive us. He's always willing to forgive us. Jesus said, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. He was willing to forgive us before we even asked. But there is a blockage in us receiving that when we hold a grudge against someone else. Now think about Matthew 18. Remember the story in Matthew 18 where one servant goes to his master and he owes him so much of a debt. Like huge debt, right? Millions of dollars of debt. And he says, please, I'll pay you back. And the man says, no, you'll never be able to pay me back. I forgive you. And I'll let you go. But then right away he goes out and he grabs his fellow servant by the throat. And this guy owes him a few dollars. And he says, I'll throw you into prison until you pay me everything. And then the real master comes after him and says, I heard that I forgave you everything and you were so unforgiving. And then he says, I'll throw you into jail with the tormentors who are going to torment you. What are those tormentors? Really interesting what Paul talks about. There are these tormentors that happen to people when they can't forgive. And you know what those tormentors are? They're bitterness and anger and evil speaking and malice. And here's how they look in the book of Ephesians.
The book of Ephesians says, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, which is loud quarreling, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. So malice is extreme hatred. And then he goes on, he says, and be kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God in Christ forgave you.
So those first things, is that tender-hearted or hard-hearted? Those first things are all hard-hearted. Yeah. And Jesus says you need to be tender-hearted towards one another. So there's a change of heart that has to happen for us to be able to forgive. Really, really impossible on our own, but God can change your heart. And that's where the healing comes in. So are there some evidences that we haven't forgiven? And how do we know that we are bitter inside? Well, these things will show up.
You'll have a critical attitude towards others, insensitivity to the needs of others because you're so focused on the pain that others have caused you. You'll have an ungrateful heart, revenge, the desire to get even with others, mistrust of others, and depression. So
So,
these are all scientifically
yeah, indications,
indications of
bitterness. Yeah.
unresolved bitterness.
In fact, some of the scientific knowledge or information actually says to us when it comes to anger, at the heart, uh, most of these causes of depression have in the middle of them is anger and bitterness. Okay, so that is very, very key to this whole understanding. Okay, so forgiveness is the only mechanism for rooting out the bitterness, the resentment, and the anger that is within you. We're talking about rooting it out. We're not talking about, as I said yesterday, we're not just cutting off the dandelions. We're not just mowing down the dandelions. We're going to the deep-rooted issues. So yesterday there was a lady here who asked the question, what if the person who hurt me, who I'm angry with, who I can't forgive, is someone who hurt someone close to me? And the person who's close to me is no longer alive for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe they were killed by this person. I don't know. But how do you forgive someone who has hurt someone? I can forgive them if they hurt me, but can I forgive someone who has hurt someone that I love? Right?
That's a tough one.
That's a tough one. So here's the injustice of it. People will say, but it's not fair. Why should I forgive? Right? Why should I be the one to forgive when I am the one who has been wronged? Right? Why should I forgive? I'm the one who's been wronged. Why should I forgive them? They didn't make me suffer the way that, they didn't suffer, in other words, the way they made me suffer, so it's not fair. Does this make sense to you? You ever feel that way? They're not suffering. I'm suffering. Why should I forgive? What would you say to that person?
It will bring healing.
It will bring healing. What will bring healing?
To forgive.
The forgiveness, yes. Will you stop suffering when you forgive?
I think that God can give you peace.
Yeah, He
because
can
the
give you
Bible says
peace.
I can do all things through Christ who gives me strength.
Right? So take this as an example. Someone takes a baseball bat and hits, I hope this never happens, but they swing this baseball bat and they hit you in the leg and break your leg. And then someone comes to you and says, hey, you can't walk on that leg anymore unless you go to the doctor. And you say, why should I have to go to the doctor? I didn't break my leg. They broke my leg. Why shouldn't they go to the doctor? Because they don't have a broken leg. And you say, no, that doesn't work. I'm just going to walk around with a broken leg. Okay. Suffer away. You get what's happening? Only when you go to the doctor and they put a cast on there and you get healed, can you walk again. Forgiveness is for you. You holding a grudge against them is making you suffer worse. And you're saying, but they're not suffering. No, they're not. Some people who hurt us are not even alive, and we're still suffering because of what they said or did to us. So we're angry with a dead person. Yeah? Okay.
And if you do go to the doctor to get help, eventually you will be healed and you'll be able to run again. Mm-hmm. But it takes time. Mm-hmm. And this is a process. Forgiveness is a process, and healing takes time.
Yes. So Jesus said,
but I say unto you, love your enemies, bless them that curse you, do good to them that hate you, and pray for them which despisefully use you.
So we used to live in South Africa. My wife is South African. I came from Canada originally, but I met her in South Africa, where I was studying for a number of years and working as a pastor. And they had something in South Africa called apartheid. You ever heard of that before? And apartheid meant that not just white people and black people were separated from one another, but also Indian people and colored people, which was a mixed race of not black, not white, right? And they were all separated from each other. That was apartheid. During that time, there's a lot of atrocities in the name of race, okay, and racism. And afterwards, years later, after Nelson Mandela was let out of prison, they had something called the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. You ever heard of that before? At the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, all the truth was coming out. So they had people testifying about what had happened, all these atrocities. They had police officers who had killed people, who had come, military, all that kind of thing. At one of these hearings, there was a lady there whose son had been taken from their house in the middle of the night, and she never saw him ever again. But she knew the officer who had taken her son in the middle of the night, and she recognized him, and he was called to the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. He came and he spoke. And she said, I want to know what happened to my son that night. Where did you take him? So he told the truth. He said, that night, I took your son. I made him, went out into the bush. I made him dig a shovel, like dig a hole with a shovel, big enough for me to bury him in. And then I shot him. And he fell into the hole, and I buried him. And that's why you've never seen him again. And this lady was crying. And of course, and then the judges, they said to her, ma'am, what would you like to have happen to this man? And after she dried her tears, she said, I lost my son. I don't have anyone in my home anymore. I would like that police officer to come and live with me and be my son. I don't know what that is, because that's more than forgiveness. That's like, how do you do that? The police officer ended up doing that and going and living with this lady. And she loved him like he was her son.
And he loved her like she was his mother.
Yeah. That's transformation. Something had happened in her heart and in his that I can't explain. That only God can
only
do.
God. That's a God moment, isn't it? Like we're just in awe of what God can do.
Yeah. So there are some science studies, and people like to hear the science studies, and I think this is really important. The health and wellness benefits of forgiveness. Number one.
Forgiveness actually reduces the stress response. Forgiveness lowers blood pressure, your heart rate, and your levels of cortisol, which is the stress hormone. Forgiveness helps deactivate the body's fight or flight mode, reducing chronic stress that can damage the heart and immune system.
So is forgiveness good for you? Can you see why that lady I was talking about yesterday couldn't eat her food without chewing on ginger? Because she was angry. Because she hadn't forgiven her mother for leaving so many years ago. She hadn't forgiven her father for remarrying some woman who treated her so badly. She couldn't forgive her siblings. You can imagine being the oldest sibling, and now you have to take care of all these other siblings. Do you think those other siblings are going to look up to you and say, hey, thank you for disciplining me? Nope. So she was the big bad sister her whole life. So she was carrying all that bitterness until she could forgive. So forgiveness improves your mental health. So it lowers rates of anxiety and depression. So forgiving people tend to have fewer symptoms of these conditions. It decreases rumination. In other words, the constant thinking in the mind and replaying of the hurtful events. You are relieved from that. And greater emotional resilience. So the ability to bounce back after setbacks improves.
Forgiveness enhances physical health. You have better immune function. Chronic anger and bitterness weakens the immune defenses, but forgiveness helps to restore the balance. There's reduced chronic pain. Studies show people who forgive often report less physical pain and discomfort. And lastly, you have improvements in sleep quality because you have fewer intrusive thoughts, and reduced stress leads to more restful sleep. So it actually helps with your physical health.
So I remember at 1 week to wellness, or it was 1 week in paradise that we were doing in Camp Frenda, and there was a young lady there who couldn't sleep. And she said for a number of years she was getting maybe 3 or 4 hours of sleep at night. So she came to Rene and I, and we were doing spiritual counseling, and Rene prayed with her. And she went through the forgiveness process, and she was weeping, and she said after that she felt so free. The next morning, she came to worship, and she said it was the first time in years that she had slept through the night without waking up. 8 hours of sleep. And throughout the rest of the 1 week in paradise, she never had sleep problems. She slept through the entire time. We've seen that over and over again, where people come with sleep issues. They go to the core problems. They're able to deal with those core problems, and they're able to manage to sleep. So forgiveness leads to healthier relationships. So it can lead to restored trust and communication, although it doesn't always lead to that. And lower risk of social isolation, which itself is linked to better long-term health outcomes, and greater empathy and compassion towards others. So now you're moving from inward to outward focus, where you can actually have closer connections with other people and healthy connections.
Forgiveness leads to positive lifestyle changes. People who forgive are more likely to engage in healthy coping strategies like exercise, prayer, social connection, rather than destructive ones like substance abuse or emotional eating. And then there's also increased life satisfaction and an overall sense of purpose.
Remember a lady who was in South Africa. She taught with us for a number of years. She had a number of girls, and one day one of her daughters, Ashley, got into a car. I think she was youngest. Ashley was the youngest daughter. And she got into the car with a friend. And a little while later, she heard ambulances, and she was like, what's going on? And then someone came to their house and said, Ashley's been in an accident. She said, but she just left. And so she got in her car, she went down the road, and the car was burning, and her daughter was killed. And she lost her life in that car. So this lady became so inward focused, so angry, she just sat and she couldn't even leave the house. Understandably, right? Understandably. She was grieving. She was in tremendous pain. How do I forgive these people? All of that was going through her mind.
But herself too, for letting her daughter go with a
yeah.
friend, right?
Yeah.
So
This went on for 2 years. But she had a friend who came and visited her every day and helped her around the house and helped her to take care of her other 2 daughters. Eventually, the friend sat with her after 2 years of this and being kind and gentle with her. And she said, what was her first name again? Linda.
Linda.
And she said, Linda, I think it's time now. She said, what? She said, you got 2 other daughters. You need to get up now and take care of them. It's good you've grieved for Ashley, but you need to move on. She said that was the hardest thing she ever heard. She thought it was mean to begin with. But then she realized it's not mean, it's loving. And she could move on and forgive and let go and say, one day I'll see Ashley again. But right now, I've got 2 other daughters, and I've got to live for them. That was really cool to see how she had changed.
But not just how Linda had changed, but what a big difference it made in those daughters' lives, right? Because those daughters obviously felt abandoned and neglected, and when their mother experienced healing, just to see those two girls just blossom and thrive again.
Yeah.
So that was beautiful.
So forgiveness promotes spiritual and emotional peace. This is not just a feeling. This is something that God gives to you. So Christianity and many other faith traditions link forgiveness to a sense of spiritual freedom, inner peace, and a closer relationship with God. So this peace can reduce physiological arousal and promote healing, so that your system is not always in high gear, but actually you have a sense of peace and your whole body is healed through that.
And lastly, forgiveness increases longevity. Studies suggest that individuals who practice forgiveness and let go of chronic resentment live longer lives. So, by reducing stress, improving relationships, and enhancing overall well being, forgiveness can contribute to longer life expectancy and healthier aging.
So is forgiveness good for you? It is. See, we suffer when we don't forgive. And so it just removes that suffering. We're set free when God produces that in us. So here's two sentences, and see if you can see the contradiction. I can't forgive them. They'll just hurt me again. So why are those two sentences a contradiction? They're not mutually exclusive. Why would you say that? Go ahead.
Forgiving them and allowing them to hurt you are two different things.
They're-
Forgive, but you don't have to let them hurt you again.
You don't have to let them hurt you again. Thank you for saying that. Keep going if you have any other thoughts there. That's about it. So forgiveness is something that is for something that happened when? In the past. Right? Whereas hurting you again is something that's going to happen maybe in the future, right? So what they're saying is, if I hold on to the hurt from the past, I will be able to control my future. No, you won't. So if I just hold on to this unforgiveness for something that happened in the past, I'm going to be really happy in the future. No. You're going to hurt yourself more. Okay, but you have a good point. They're not mutually exclusive. So by forgiving them doesn't mean that you're going to put yourself in a position of being hurt by them again. And let's explain why that is.
Forgiveness does not equate with trust.
Does that make sense?
Forgiveness is about the past, like Mike said. It's about what's already happened. Forgiveness is free. Somebody can't earn it. In fact, they've already done something not to earn it. Forgiveness only takes one person. And who's that one person? You. Right? So forgiveness takes you. It's free. You can't earn it.
So trust is about the future, isn't it? Okay. So I do forgive you for what happened in the past, but I don't know if I can trust you in the future. I can't know unless I've seen something trustworthy. Would you agree with that? In other words, trust is not free, it's earned. Is that true? You don't just trust anybody. You have to get to know them. They have to earn your trust. So, but I totally forgive you for what's already happened. That's already happened in the past. So trust that leads to reconciliation takes how many parties? Two. Okay? Forgiveness takes you. Trust takes two. Okay? And those two people. So when it comes to God, people ask this question. What about God? Well, God forgives everybody freely. We know that. But not everyone chooses to be reconciled to God and to love and trust him. Is he trustworthy? Yes. But do we choose? We have to choose to love and trust him and accept his forgiveness of us, which will transform us. So in other words, the underlying purpose of forgiveness is to restore the relationships. But is this guaranteed? Yes or no? No. It's not guaranteed that the relationship will be restored. So when that lady said that I want that police officer now to be my son, he had a decision to make. He didn't have to say yes, right? He didn't even have to be like a son to her, but he chose to be. So it took, that reconciliation took a process where she had to get to know him, he had to get to know her, and it wasn't instantaneous. Is forgiveness the same as restored trust? Yes or no? No. So this is the difference. Trust being restored takes time. So sometimes what you have is one person will break trust, and the other person will say, well, I'm sorry. Is that enough? No. Sometimes we hear this where one spouse will cheat on the other and say, but I said I was sorry. How come you can't just let it go? Right? Well, what happens is when you break trust is you have to now prove that you're trustworthy. You can't just talk yourself out of something you behaved yourself into. Does that make sense? Let me say that again. You can't just talk yourself out of something you behaved yourself into. So if a husband says, I said I was sorry, then you say to him, are you willing to give your cell phone to your wife so she can see all your conversations? Can she have an app to follow you wherever you go? Absolutely, I want her to trust me. If he says that, good. Doesn't mean she's going to trust you automatically, but there has to be transparency. There has to be a willingness to say, I will never do that again, and I want you to trust me, and I'll do everything possible so that you will. Does that make sense? There has to be that.
So when you forgive, you're letting go of the injustice. Because resentment poisons relationships because you carry it forward into other relationships. Mm-hmm. So that's the thing. If you have resentments and bitterness, it's going to be carried into future relationships.
Mm-hmm. That's why they have that saying, hurt people hurt people. You ever heard that before? Okay. So here's a protest that we often hear.
I can never forgive because holding on to my anger makes me stronger and less vulnerable. Is this true?
Holding on to your anger, does it make you stronger?
Does it make you stronger?
Or does it make you weaker? We've just found all the studies that show you become weaker when you hold on to your anger, right? And it makes you more vulnerable, more controlled. You're actually controlled by your anger all the time. So holding on to that anger, holding on to that lack of forgiveness actually makes you weaker and more vulnerable. So
let's say you decide to get away from the Saskatchewan
winter. When it's winter.
When it's winter, not now. You don't want to leave now. It's lovely here.
Do you ever leave and go to a hot place when it's winter here?
Where do you like going?
Where do you like to go?
Where do you usually go? Mexico.
Mexico. Oh. Vancouver Island. Okay. It's warmer there. Yes. Peru.
Let's say you go.
Let's go to Peru or Mexico where it's nice and hot.
Hot. And you go there and you find this amazing beach and you go lie on the beach and you fall asleep in the sun.
Oh, it's so nice.
Oh, it's wonderful. But if you fall asleep for more than 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours, what are you going to wake up with? A serious sunburn, right? And then you get back from the beach and you go sit in your Airbnb or in the resort and you trying to recover from the sunburn. And your your child comes up from behind you and jumps on your back, what are you going to do? You're going to scream, "Oh, get off of me." Okay, and you're just recovering from your child bouncing on your back when your spouse comes from behind and they give you a nice big bear hug. What are you going to do then? Same thing, right? Get off of me. That really hurts. Go away. And you're just recovering from that, and your brother-in-law comes by and slaps you on the back, right? And you're like, "Oh, stop it. That hurts so much." Okay, here's the thing. When you are burned, you lose the ability to tell the difference between touches of play, touches of love, and touches of aggression. Everything hurts, and so you push everyone away.
Do you get the analogy?
When we've been wounded and we've been hurt, that's so hard. So we push everyone away,
Push
right?
everyone away. So, what's the best strategy for sunburn? To keep everyone from touching you or to get healing for the sunburn? How do you get healing from the sunburn? You put some aloe vera on, right?
Yeah.
Forgiveness is like aloe vera for the soul, right? It gets rid of the burn so that you don't poison all your relationships. And you're not afraid of everyone. Forgiveness is the way of rooting that out so you're not afraid of being hurt again. It enables you to love again. That's what forgiveness does for you. Does that help? It transforms the relationship. It transforms your thinking. So one lady put her hand up in one of the places we were, not here in Saskatchewan, in another part of the country, and she said, "What if I don't want to go out into the sun ever again?"
Or I'm never going to go into the sun again.
What was she saying? She was saying, "I'm afraid of people.
Because I don't want to get hurt again.
I don't want to get hurt again." Because she had been hurt by everybody in her life, or at least that's the way she saw it. And so she was like, "I don't want to go out into the sun again. I don't want to go near anybody ever again." Of course, understandably, because of all the hurt that she has experienced. But without forgiveness, she will stay locked in that pain. And she won't be able to get out of it. And she's suffering. The Bible says it this way: "Great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them." We talked about offense yesterday, right? And that offense, how it's a scandal. It's like, I can't believe these people treated me that way. But those who love thy law, that law of love, it transforms us so that we can love again. That's what forgiveness does for us. It frees you to be able to love again. Do you have any questions about forgiveness? Because we really laid a heavy, heavy lot of stuff on you. And if you have anything that you want to question or comment on, please do so. Yes, sir.
My question is about the Lord's Prayer.
The Lord's Prayer, yes.
It talks about forgiveness,
Yes.
and it compares the forgiveness that you anticipate from God
Yes.
to be the same forgiveness that we extend to our brothers and sisters.
Correct.
So maybe you can talk about the application. What should be the standard?
The standard?
Yeah.
The standard is God's love for us. Yeah. He's willing to forgive us. And the indication of that is shown in that parable in Matthew 18. If I've received his forgiveness, I should be able to extend it. Freely I've received, freely I should give. So it causes because what happens in that parable is he turns that unforgiving servant over to the tormentors. In other words, they're being tormented by what? What are you being tormented by when you don't forgive? Your anger, your bitterness, your resentment, all of those things. That cuts you off from God. It cuts you off from other people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because I was asking this regard to, you see, when you forgive, there is
Yes.
that decision. You might not forget,
Yeah,
but that is that decision which you make, an intentional decision,
it has to be.
not to remember.
Yeah.
So that's the part which I think most people do not actually reach the level of making that decision in their lives to forget. Because I think also we have these problems even in the churches as well.
Yes.
So, and I think having this forgiveness in the Lord's Prayer, it means that as Christians we need to implement it. It's something that we need to continuously develop as
Yes.
we continue in the Christian journey. Thank you.
So let's answer that. Is forgiveness amnesia? In other words, you lose your memory of that event. Okay? Yes.
Forgiveness is not is not forgetting. Let's say I have a very good friend and she happens to steal from me. Right? When she comes and visits me, am I going to leave my wallet on the table? No. Right? Because I know that's going to be a temptation for her. And because I love her, I'm not going to put her into that temptation. So I'm not going to forget that she's stolen from me. Right? But I am going to forgive her.
Yes. So what does it mean when the Bible says, I will remember their sins no more? So in the Bible, it says, heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will never pass away. Are there records of sins in the Bible? Yes or no? Yes. You have David, who's responsible for the death of Uriah. Is Uriah going to be in heaven? Yes. Is David going to be in heaven? The Bible says yes. Did Uriah know that David killed him? No. So when David gets to heaven and Uriah gets to heaven and Uriah gets to pick up the Bible and read what David did to him, he says, why is he here? Yes? So is David the same David who killed Uriah, yes or no? No.
No.
That's why he can say, I can remember your sins no more. Why would you hold something against someone who is not that person anymore? That person has changed. They're transformed.
And another example would be Saul, who stoned Stephen.
Yeah.
Right? Is Stephen going to be in heaven?
Yes.
Is Saul, who was transformed to become Paul, is he going to be in heaven?
Yes.
So what's Stephen going to do when he sees Paul?
He's going to rejoice.
He's going to rejoice because he knows it's not the same person that stoned him that was responsible for his killing.
Does that make sense? So when someone comes into, say a name comes up to the church board, do we want this person to serve in this position? And someone brings something up. Well, many years ago, that person did this and this and this and this. Yes, they did. We all know about that. Are they the same person? Or have they changed? Testimony, testimony, testimony. That person has changed. They're not the same person. Do you trust him now? Yes. Why? Because there's evidence that he has changed. Now he has earned the trust of the people within the church board. Yes, he did something in the past. But is he that same person today? No. So can we put him in that position? Yes. Okay? When I was younger, I was a very different person than the person that I am now. Very, very different. Praise the Lord for that. You wouldn't want me to be a pastor the way I was back then. Okay? I just wasn't the person you want to trust. But I'm a different person. So why would I hold on to, why would the Lord remember something? He doesn't want to. I mean, what does the Bible say? Love keeps no record of wrongs. Why? Because that record of wrong is who you were, not who you are. Does it make sense? That's what forgiveness does. But forgiveness does more than that. Forgiveness can lead to restored trust if that person embraces it and they are transformed and become changed. So it doesn't mean it necessarily happens because that person has to make the choice for that transformation to happen.
But what if they're not transformed?
If they're not
And
transformed,
the
then they're the same
abuse
person.
is
Yeah.
continued.
Then you have to keep a very safe boundary.
You can
Between
forgive
yourself.
them,
Yeah,
but there has to be boundaries,
you have to.
especially if the hurt is continuous, on a continuous basis.
There was
Then
a,
it's not a matter of giving second chances and saying, I forgive them so that I can let them in and it's okay for them to continue hurting me. No.
or abusing my children.
Or abusing my children. No. Right? You can forgive them, but there has to be healthy boundaries.
Because they're not a safe person.
Exactly.
So I've had this situation where people have done things and they've hurt other people, but there's no remorse. There's no remorse. They haven't changed. They didn't even admit that oh, yes, I did that, but it wasn't a big deal. No, it was a big deal. People were hurt and harmed. And unless I see remorse and change and transformation, no. I can forgive you, yes, but not restore trust. Does that make sense? Okay. We really do have to think deeply about these issues, right? Okay. There's a hand.
What if the person who wronged me
Yes.
didn't ask me for forgiveness? I still forgive.
Yes. Yes. Well, the people who wronged Jesus on the cross, he said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. They weren't asking for forgiveness, right? Did he freely forgive? Yes. God's attitude towards us is always, yes, I forgive you. So forgiveness takes you. Doesn't take the other person, right? If they didn't say sorry, that's on them, not on you.
You can still forgive them. I mean, we would like to hear an apology.
Absolutely.
That would be the ideal.
Yes.
But if that doesn't happen,
Yeah.
forgiveness takes you.
And you can't force them to,
No.
right? You can't say to the person, yeah. I mean, I've had people come to other people and say, remember when you did this and this, and they're like, no, I don't remember that. I forgive you. For what? You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So there's no apology and there's no remorse. So yeah, you can forgive, but restored trust, no. It's not going to happen because the person is completely in denial, unfortunately. And when you're in denial, one of those locked hearts was denial. They're locked in the place of denial and they want to stay there. That's a lie, but that's unfortunate. Yeah, go ahead.
This is kind of, well, it's related, but it isn't related. The whole afternoon we've been talking about forgiving others.
Yes.
Several years ago, well, when my husband was still alive, and there were issues, and he had some, and he was having an issue with forgiveness and other people.
Yeah.
And I looked at him one day, and I said, have you forgiven yourself? Well, you would have thought I'd sworn at him and everything else. He was very angry, and for several days he didn't say anything, and then he finally came around and he said, I don't think I have forgiven myself. And I said, if you are good enough for God to forgive you, you're good enough for you to forgive.
Amen.
Several weeks later, he actually had forgiven himself for the instances that had happened. But it took a long time, and sometimes that self-forgiveness, full of guilt and everything else, even though he knew he'd been forgiven by God,
Yes.
he could not forgive himself. And I wonder, there are probably some among us who fit into the category that he did.
Yeah.
And it was a sad thing to watch, but it was such a beautiful transformation when he finally came out of that and said, yeah, I'm free. And he was free after that.
That's awesome.
So,
That's awesome.
okay.
Thank the Lord for wives who can confront husbands who become quiet. It tends to be a tendency among men, more than women, to become quiet and stonewall. 85% of men stonewall compared to women. And sometimes they never come out of it. Some men can stonewall for a long time. It's not a good place to be. But being able to put aside pride and selfishness and to say, hey, maybe my wife's onto something, right? Okay, thank you.
The other thing, there is consequences. And
Yes.
sometimes,
Sure.
even if they're forgiven,
Yeah.
even if they transform,
Yes.
there's consequences.
There are.
And that's till Christ comes.
That's true.
And, it's like the children of Israel. They said, you know, we want to go, no, we can't. Oh yeah, now we're sorry. No, you're going to go 40 years in the
That's
wilderness.
right. That's right.
Even though God had forgiven them and stuff, and same with us, like a pedophile.
Yeah.
You can forgive. They may be transformed, but there is always consequences.
Yeah.
And you just have to live with those,
That's
even
right.
if you're forgiven.
That's right. Yeah.
I know there was a Christian woman who was in jail for murder and was sentenced to death. And she had totally transformed. It was evident, but she still received the death penalty. The consequences are there.
Yeah.
The sins are there.
Yeah. Thanks for
That's a
sharing
good
that.
point. Thank you, Janet.
Yeah, we can make decisions. God gives us the power of choice, but we can't choose the consequences, right? I mean, if I plant garlic and when the harvest comes, I wanted tomatoes. So what? You planted garlic, right? You got garlic. Don't say you reap what you sow, right? Like what you planted is the consequences you can't decide. That's just what happened. You know, I don't know if you know Carla Homolka, okay, her situation. She became a Seventh-day Adventist. She's a faithful member. She goes to church, but she's had to change her identity because of what she had done, right? And for the sake of her kids, you know, everything. It was like she had to change, and she's not trusted by people because of what she had done in the past. Is she transformed now? Yes, from what I understand. She's a totally different person. But there are consequences to those actions, and she became a public figure. For me to go and interview her probably would make me a candidate for stoning, right? You know, because people in Canada would not see that as acceptable. It just wouldn't be because of the atrocities that were caused, right? So yeah. So thank you. Yes, we're finishing. Any last comments? No? Thank you all. Take a moment to pray together, to pray with one another, to pray for each other. And thank you so much. Thank you for sharing. I think right now, after we pray, we have a break, and then we have Liz Obamsoan is going to be sharing with you. She's a wonderful lady. We did an interview with her, and she's going to be in our next season. So, wonderful, wonderful testimony. So go ahead, pray for each other.